Hello everyone, Reza here. This video is all about the patch function in PowerApps. We will start with the basics of the patch function to insert and update data in a SharePoint list. Then I will cover error handling, then showcase an app that we will enhance by leveraging the patch function. This will also include bulk updates by leveraging patch. So let's check it out in action. In PowerApps, the patch function allows us to modify or create one or more records in our data source. You can use the patch function to modify or create data in complex scenarios, such as when you do updates that require no user interaction, or scenarios where you need forms that span across multiple screens. To learn about the patch function, the data source that I will be leveraging here is a SharePoint list called ideas. And in this list, I currently have 4 key columns: the title, text column, short description, text column, long description, multi-line text column, and status, which is a choice column in my SharePoint list. Let's begin with giving the ability to the user to create an item in that SharePoint list by leveraging the patch function. For that, I will need to create a form-like experience where the user can enter data. So I will start with the text control. This would be for the title, another text control for the short description, and then my third text control, which I will set its mode to multi-line. This would be my long description. And I've added a few labels to supplement those text controls. Best practice, I have renamed all my text controls. In order for the user to take an action to create an item, I will add a button control, change the text to submit, and on select of this button is where I would like to call the patch function. The syntax is patch my data source, which in my case is connected in my Power App here called ideas. So I will select ideas. Now what's the record that you would like to patch? I am trying to create a record, so I would use the defaults function against my data source. Defaults basically means I'm trying to create a new record. So patch my data source where I'm trying to create a new record, and what is the data that I would like to patch. This is where I can define all the columns that I would like to set. I will open the curly braces. It will list out all the columns. I have a column called title, so I will select this. What's the data related to this? That would come from my txt title. So txt title.text, comma, what's my next column that I would like to update? My column is called short description in my SharePoint list. This would come from txt short description.text. And then finally, my long description column, which would come from txt long description.text. I will close the curly braces for the update parameter related to the patch function, and I will close my patch function. If I was to preview the app and enter some sample data and click submit, this has gone ahead and executed the patch function. The way I can confirm it for now is if I head back to my SharePoint list, here is the latest entry that I just made in the system. Now, if I would like to display the data that is being recorded in my ideas list, I will leverage a gallery control. I'll pick the vertical gallery, place it here on the right, change the layout to title and subtitle, and connect this to my ideas list. And since I would like the latest entries to be right here on the top, I will use the sort function to sort this on modified date in descending order. So the latest entry that I made, which was pulse oximetry, is right here. Now, when you use the patch function to create or edit data, the key is to understand the format in which the columns expects data. Title, short description, and long description were all text type columns. So my patch function was pretty straightforward. But what if I would like to patch the status column as well, which in my case is a choice column. Now with SharePoint, there are various types of columns, lookups, person type columns, and more. I have this reference blog post that showcases the formats that the SharePoint column types expect. Now in my case, I'm dealing with a choice column here. So the way I would patch the data for that status column would be as follows. So I will copy this format, and in my patch function, I will add another column here, which is my status column, and I would like to patch it using that format. The format is an object which has a property called value, and here I have to define the value of my choice. In my case, I would like to start with new. So whenever a new idea is created, the status needs to default to new. Let's give this a try. I've entered some sample data. I will click submit. Here is the new record that shows up in my gallery. And if I look at my SharePoint list, here is the entry that has just come in where the status is set to new. And on very similar lines, if you have a person column, here is the type that you would have to provide for patching a person type column. For a lookup column, you need the value and the ID since you're looking up to a different list. For multi-select type columns, these are tabular in nature. For multi-select choice columns, it'll be a table of choice data type values. And for lookup columns, it would be a table of lookup type values. And so on and so forth. Now let's try to edit data based upon a selection that the user makes in the gallery. Now in a gallery control, there is a property called template fill, which basically showcases which item in the gallery was selected. To highlight the selected item of the gallery, I will use the formula if this item dot is selected. In that case, I will give it a background color of Alice blue. Else, I will keep the background color as white. As I make my selection, I can see the item being highlighted. And for the selection that I make, I would like that data to be represented in my text controls that I added here. To do that, for my gallery control, I have this property called onSelect. I will set a variable called varIdea, and I will set it to this item. This item meaning the current item that the user selects in this gallery. And now for my text input controls, I would like to set its default value based upon the selection that the user has made in the gallery. The default for my txt title column would be varIdea dot title. Short description would be varIdea dot short description, and default for long description would be varIdea dot long description. So as I make my selections in the gallery, we can see the data being populated in my text controls. So in order for the user to create a new record, I will insert an icon. I'll pick the add icon, place it right here. When the user selects this, I will set that variable, which is varIdea, to blank. So now if I select this, it goes to blank. Whereas if I start selecting my item in the gallery, it will populate that respective data. When blank is selected, it still shows an item selected in the gallery to avoid that confusion. The default property of the gallery, you can set it as follows: coalesce, varIdea, and an empty object. Meaning, if varIdea has a value, that would be the default. If not, set it to empty, meaning no item is selected in the gallery. When I select, it highlights that item and shows the data in the form. When I click plus, it clears out that selection. So with this setup, now if the user hits submit, my code still creates new items That's because the onSelect function is set to create a new entry because I'm using the defaults function when I'm patching data to my data source. So here I need to add a check, and I will add that in the record parameter. If is blank where idea, meaning the user is trying to create a new record, I will use defaults of ideas. If not, I will use the variable itself, which is where idea, meaning it will update the already existing item with the values that I have defined here. Now for my status column, I'm hard coding it to the value new. Let's change that behavior. I will insert a drop down control. This is where the statuses would be defined. So the items for the drop down control would be choices of my data source, which is ideas, dot my choice column, which is status. So now this drop down will load all the choices. And this drop down's default property would need to be where idea dot status. It's a choice column. So to get its value, I have to get its value property. So this now will set the default value depending upon the item that I select. And if it is a new item, it will default to the status new. In SharePoint, for a choice column, you can reorder these, and PowerApps will respect the order to start with. To show the status here in my gallery so we can see the changes live, I will edit the gallery, add a label, and the text would be this item dot status dot value. My drop-down control, I have renamed it to drop-down status. For the submit buttons on select, where I was hard coding the status, now I will get its value from drop-down dot selected dot value. So if I preview the app, let's say I change the status for commercial banking to approved, hit submit, we can see the status changing here on the fly. Next, let's look at how we can clear data from our columns when patching and how to handle errors. Now for both of these, it is important that we head over to app settings, go to upcoming features and search for error. There is an upcoming feature called formula level error management. It's important that we turn this on. If I was to clear data from any of my columns while patching, it would go ahead and empty that data in my data source. So let's say the long description and the short description for this specific item, I'll set it to empty, click submit. It will go ahead and set those values to empty. And in case of error handling, let's take a very common scenario. Mandatory fields in my data source. Title is a mandatory column. If I try and create a new record and not provide value for the title column and click submit, I will get the error message that says network error when using the patch function. Now this throws this runtime error on my patch function, and you can handle this by encapsulating the patch function under the if error function. So if there is an error in this patch function, in that case, I would like to notify the user about the error. One of the properties it exposes is first error, so pick that. First error dot message. This will give me the exact error message, and here I will pick the notification type as error and maybe show this error message for 2 seconds. I click submit. That's the error that it has captured. Notice there are no runtime errors because I have handled that. And there could be various reasons for your errors. For example, let's take the short description text column. The maximum number of characters that this column allows in my data source here is 50. So if I was to create an item where the short description exceeds the limit, and if I click submit, notice how the error handling takes place, and it clearly notifies the user that there was an error when using the patch function, and here is the error message. Now, keeping all of these patch concepts in mind, here is a real-world use case of a Power App where patch can be put into action. I have an app called Suggestion Box wherein users can suggest ideas, and administrators can come in and change the status of that idea. So when I log in as a user, I get a dashboard that shows the count of ideas in the respective statuses. I can click on share an idea or suggestion. This opens up a form that I can fill as a user. The same concept, enter the title of the idea, description, and long description. So I've entered the title, short description, long description. The moment I fill the details, submit idea button comes alive. On selection of this, I'm leveraging that same concept. Is the user creating a new record? If yes, use the defaults function. If no, it will use the existing item and then update the columns. So once I hit submit, it's creating a new record, gives me that confirmation. New idea count increases. If I select it, it will show me all the new ideas in the system and who created those ideas. Now, as a user, I'm only allowed to create ideas and then view all the ideas in the system. But if I sign in as an administrator of the system, and this button is only visible to the admins of the system, I am playing that role. So if I select that button and this time head over to ideas, here is the idea that I created. I can select this. It will take me back to that same form experience. I am freer to make modifications, either to the data that was entered by the user, or I can change the status. Let's say I would like to change the status here to approved. I hit update idea. So it would update the status of this specific idea to approved. And in the approved queue, I can see that specific idea. Let's take the example of new ideas. When new ideas come into the system, they have to first either be approved or rejected. Now, as an admin, I can make a selection to a new idea and change the status, but I have to come to a different screen. What if I would like to take that action right here? Remember, the beauty of patches, you don't have to create form experiences for the user. Now for my ideas gallery, I will edit, and in here, I will insert a couple of icons. One would be check. I'll use this for approved, and I will add another one for cancel. I will use this for reject. And I have added a couple of label controls so the user understands the action that they are taking when they click on these buttons, which is approved or reject. Now when approved is clicked, I would like to patch my data source, which is ideas, and I would like to patch the existing record, which is this item. And here, I would like to update the status column to the value approved. And when I reject, I would like to set the status to declined. And all of these 4 controls that I added in my Power App, I will set its visibility to this item dot status dot value is equal to new, because they should only show up if the current status is new. So now as an admin, I can straight away take decisions. CSRs, I approve this. Loans, I reject this. If I go back to view all my ideas, here are the last 2 decisions that I made, which was approved and declined. I've added a few more ideas on the new status. So let's go back to new. When this decision is taken to approve or reject, I would like to maintain the information of who the approver was and at what date and time did they take that decision. Now, these are things that you would not want to ask the user for, because I am currently signed into the app as the approver. So PowerApps already knows that. And when I click that button, I also know the date and time at which that button was clicked. Let's take this one step even further, wherein I would like to track the entire history of how the status has progressed. So for that, firstly, in my SharePoint list, I will add 3 different columns. One will be person, I will call this approver so I can track who took the decision of approve or reject. I'll create a date column. I'll call this approval date. And I will create a multi-line text column, call it approval history. And this, I will enable enhanced rich text and click save. So 3 new columns have been added. Since I am editing my Power App, I need to ensure that I refresh my connection to SharePoint so the latest schema is reflected in the Power App. When I am approving, on select, apart from the status column update, now I would like to update other columns like approver. It's a person type column. Back to my patch control reference. Here is person type column. I will copy this and simply paste it in here. This sets the person type column to the current logged in user by using the user property. Next column, approval date. This I will use now, which is the current date and time. And then approval history would be use something known as string interpolation. So I'll use the dollar symbol. And here I will start writing my HTML text, which is approval status updated to, in bold, approved by. Now I need the name of the user who is taking this decision. So under 2 curly braces, I will use user dot full name. And this was done at the current date and time. This is rich text. So I will introduce a couple of line breaks. And here I can give the original status, which was status new. The same concept is what I will use in the reject buttons on select property. The only difference here is I'm calling this out as rejected. So I have set extra columns that the user does not even see in the UI. Pulse oximeter, I approve. SSADM, I reject. Commercial banking, I approve. Here are all those 3 decisions that were taken. And in the backend SharePoint list, here are all those column values that are set. Who the approver was, what was the approval date, and the approval history. Now when it's approved, I would like to take another step. I would want to set it as implemented. So I'll add a button, call it implemented. On select of this button, I will set the status as implemented, and the approval history, I will set it as status set to implemented by the current user. And then I would like to append the previous approval history which was in play, which I can get from this item dot approval history. And this button should be visible only if the status of the current item is approved. I click implemented. It changes right here on the fly to implemented. If we look at the history for this item, status was new, then went to approved, then it went to implemented. So you can keep a full trace of your approval history as well. And all of this magic is happening thanks to the patch function. Now patch can also be leveraged to perform bulk updates. So let's take an example here. I have 3 items where the status currently is new. Now instead of approving or rejecting these one by one, if I would like to take actions in bulk, for my gallery control, I will insert a checkbox within it. I'll set its text to empty and position the checkbox right here on the left. When the user selects this, so on check, I would like to add this to a collection, and I will call this call ideas. So I will add this item to the collection of ideas when the user checks this checkbox. On uncheck, I will remove this item from that same collection. And the default property for the checkbox, meaning whether it is checked or not, I will set it to this item in call ideas. Whenever the user visits the screen, meaning on visible of the screen, I will make sure that collection that I have is cleared so that every time I land here, it's a brand new collection. I can make selections, so check, and uncheck. I go back, come back to my ideas board. All my checkboxes are cleared. I can start selecting again to add items to that collection. Bulk update the statuses. For that, I will insert a drop-down control here. Items would be choices of my data source, which is ideas dot the name of my choice column, which is status. And right next to this, I will add a button and I will call this bulk update. Now, these two options should only be visible if the count of the number of items in that collection of mine is greater than 1. Because I have to have a minimum of 2 selections to call it a bulk update. So if I only have 1 item selected, no bulk update. If I select more than 1 item, it will provide me the options to perform the bulk update. I already have all that data in that collection, and Patch can also patch multiple records in one go. And for that, I have to first ensure that I'm updating my collection because I want to change the status of all of those items to the new status that this drop-down control has. So I'll copy the name of this drop-down control. On select of bulk update button, I will use the function update if update my collection of ideas. My condition is true because I would like to update all the data in that collection. And the update that I would like to perform is only on the status column, where the value of that column, my drop down control dot selected dot value. This will go ahead and update all the statuses in that collection, but not my data source. And to update my data source, I will use the patch function on my ideas SharePoint list. What's my record? Simply the entire collection. And that is it. After this is done, I would like to clear all those selections that I had made. Let's test this out. I have pulse oximeter, commercial banking, and loans selected. All of these, I will change their status to approved in one go by clicking bulk update. Loans, pulse oximeter, and commercial banking, all of those statuses are changed to approved. Once again, if I select multiple, let's say I would like to change their status to implemented, I click bulk update, and in one go, the status has changed. And the same patch function concept can also be used for creating tabbed forms or multi-screen form experiences. I'll pick the first item and click edit. I'm making a change. So I'm going to change the title here. I will hit next. I change the category to planning and design. Hit next. And let's say I change the due date here to September 28, 2022. Now, all of these screens that I went through are different screens that are leveraging the form control in PowerApps. And when I hit this final submit, I'm actually leveraging the patch function on my data source, where I'm patching the existing record. And here I can define my updates by pointing to the different form control experiences as well. So here's my first form controls information dot the updates that were made. Here's the second information, third information, and so on and so forth. That's the beauty of the patch function. You can define multiple updates to that same record, and it will start applying all those changes one after the other. So here, if I hit submit, it will make all of those modifications for me. The modifications were made in different screens by using different form control experiences. If you enjoyed this video, then do like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you so much for watching.